All
right.
right. Welcome to the Domestic Draft Podcast. I'm Evan Bierman here with Dan Slowick. Dan, we're officially on baby watch. Is that
We
right?
are. Yeah, officially
Could be any day
on
now.
could be any day, but we're looking like August 20th, no later.
I love it. All right. So you have to keep an eye on our socials to see if there's any updates. But I see you got a beer there, Dan. We're ready to go today. What are you drinking, man?
In lieu of that, I am trying to go dry this month with alcohol. So I'm doing a non-alcoholic beer, Athletic Brewing, which actually the first time I've had it and I just had a sip, it actually tastes great. It tastes like a beer, which to my surprise, I wasn't prepared for that. But that's kind of what a lot of their marketing tells you is that, this is one of the first non-alcoholic beers to actually taste like a beer. Feels like you're drinking a beer. There just isn't any alcohol in it. Well, it contains less than 0.5% of alcohol. So if you haven't heard of Athletic Brewing Company, they started in Connecticut in 2014. Bill and Joe are the founders of it, and Bill was working on Wall Street. I feel like we've heard this story before with the brewery as well. A lot of like Wall Street guys maybe get burned out, got a bunch of capital, they maybe investment, and they go and try to start a brewery. So he was a marathon runner, ultra marathon runner working on Wall Street, and just didn't like being hungover is what it sounds like, and wanted to still be able to drink his beer but not have the effects of drinking beer. So he thought it was a good idea, felt to pursue that idea, went to a bunch of brewers with this idea and got turned down left and right until he landed on Joe Walker, who was a brewer out in Santa Fe, and they kind of both agreed that this might be a great idea. They went ahead and started their craft business in 2017. And their first brewing facility dedicated to non-alcoholic beer was opened in 2018. So it's a rather new company as well. And they're just absolutely blowing up. The company was the first non-alcoholic beer maker to make the list of the top 50 craft breweries by volume for sales in 2022. And this past year in 2023, right now, they're up to number 13. So for a strictly non-alcoholic brewing company to be in the top 20 in sales domestically is insane. If you go to their website, if you see the commercials too, they got tons of sponsorships. I think JJ Watt's one of them. There's athletes, there's food personalities that are sponsoring them as well. So I'm sure you're going to start seeing this thing everywhere, and it's kind of trendy. I know our friend who works at a brewery as well, they're brewing non-alcoholic beers. It's kind of every brewery is trying to build or brew their own. And it's a little different than the old process. That's why it tastes so good. They found a specific way to brew it that wasn't the same as like your old duels and the old fashioned ones, to where they're able to keep some of these main ingredients. And that's why it is, it's at the absolute max of to the alcohol percentage to be considered non-alcoholic. So it is 0.5%. So it's not like truly 0% alcohol. And because of that, they're able to keep some of those ingredients. But this is great. I'm a fan. They just got a new customer. What about you? What are you drinking?
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out. I've had O'Doul's before, and man, is that stuff brutal. So I have Alarmist Brewing. It's based out of Chicago. It's the beer I have here is called Crispy Boy. It's one of their 3 flagship beers. It's a lager brewed with Pilsner and specialty malts, fermented with German yeast. It's 4.9%, gets a 3.66 on Untapped. But I'll tell you a little bit about Alarmist first. Alarmist has been making beer since 2015. They have a tap room. It's been open since 2017. Child and dog friendly. They have live music, food pop-ups on occasion. It's a great little tap room. And back in 2018 at the Great American Beer Festival, they won the first ever medal, gold medal for the hazy juicy IPA category for their Lay Juice. And then in 2020, they won the Great American Beer Festival bronze medal for their American Style Pale Ale for Pantsless. So Le Juice and Pantsless are their 2 other flagship beers in addition to Crispy Boy. So this is the only non-award winner. So I wanted to check this one out. But this is what they say about Crispy Boy. It's an ice cold brewski that showcases notes of jean shorts, not touching the thermostat, the aromatics of a freshly mowed lawn, and endless appetizers at your favorite chain restaurant. Personally, I think it's the perfect beer for watching a Cubs game.
Yeah.
But speaking of our Cubs and beer, that brings me to our next guest. It's Jonah Fialkow. He's a seat vendor at Wrigley Field. You can find him on Instagram at Jewish Jonah. Jonah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to chat all things Cubs and vendor and beer related.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you got a beer yourself, right? What are you drinking?
I do have a beer myself. My buddy was just in Wisconsin, and he very graciously brought back some Spotted Cow. So
Gotta
that's what
bring
we're
it
gonna
back.
go with tonight. Yeah, I hope it's a
Nice.
twist off though, but because I
Oh, you're
don't
gonna need
have
a
my.
cap for that. You're
Oh
gonna need
no,
a cap.
I totally do. Wait, I actually think I might have one.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
we'll get it
we'll
cracked.
figure that out.
Yeah, so I stumbled upon your profile on Instagram and saw, kind of what you do, and you give the fans kind of a nice little birds or, a behind the scenes view of working at Wrigley. So I'm curious of the whole process. How do you get started to become a vendor? Was this a dream of yours, a family business? What's that application process like? And like, is it super serious and competitive, or just tell us how you became a vendor?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been a Cubs fan my entire life. Grew up in the north suburbs. Always wanted to work for the Cubs in some capacity. And when I was a senior in high school, I had nothing to do over the summer before I went to college. So my buddy's dad actually used to be a vendor and was still very much in contact with the people that are there now and that run it. So he gave us the contact information of who to reach out to. And I sent them an email. I was like, hey, my name's Jonah, about to be a freshman in college, and I got nothing to do this summer. I'm a diehard Cubs fan. I'd love to work for you. And in terms of the interview process, they needed vendors when I was applying back in 2015. And I didn't really even have one. They were just like, yeah, here's a quick screening questionnaire, background check, but we need help. You're in if you want it. So me and two of my buddies got hired that summer, and we would drive down from the north suburbs. I think we did 15 or 20 games that summer, and we carpool together and go down to work and then drive right back up. But I've been doing it ever since, and now to a much larger scale now that I live in Wrigleyville.
Nice. So at
That's
this
awesome.
point, I mean, to me, it seems like one of the more desirable positions to like working at Wrigley. I mean, you get the tips, you get to that interaction with the fans that a lot of other positions don't, the grounds crew and all that. But I mean, it seems like a really cool, position to be in. I mean, how many options do you have? Like, do you get to choose what you sell on certain days, or do you come in and they're like, hey, you're the beer guy today. This is what you're doing.
Yeah, you definitely get to choose. And there's a lot for me that goes into it in terms of decision making. So essentially, how it works is every day before the game, usually about an hour or so before first pitch, we have an office down the block from Wrigley, and we line up all the vendors that are going to work that day. We will line up in seniority order. So
Okay.
from the guys that have been there the longest all the way to the newest guys. I think there's well over 100 vendors that are employed. Not every vendor works every game, but to kind of put into perspective where I am in terms of seniority, I've been there. This is my 9th year. If there were 100 vendors, I'd probably be about 75th in line. So I'm still pretty far back, kind of like a testament to people. People don't leave the job. It's an unbelievable job. They've been doing it. Some of the guys at the very front of the line, 55, 60 years.
Okay.
So we'll line up in order, and they have a sheet of the items and the sections that they're split into. And then it's basically just like a draft. So the earliest guys obviously get the same thing every single time. They've got their sections that they work. And now I'm at a point where I can basically guarantee that I get to sell alcohol. But
Is that the
there's
big
definitely
prize? Everyone wants to sell some sort of alcohol.
Yeah, generally, it depends on the weather, I would say, but the go-to is selling alcohol in the 100 section in the box seats, lower box seats down there. But for me, it's pretty up in the air in terms of what I get each time. So I have an Excel spreadsheet that I keep track of the weather, the attendance, the time of day.
We got
I look at the weather
sabermetrics on the
forecast.
vendors.
Literally, yeah. I feel like I could be a WGN AccuWeather forecast guy on Cubs game days, because I know which way the wind is blowing, if it's blowing in or out, and all of that is kind of affecting my decision making. And then I kind of take all that analysis, and I have about 10 seconds to make my decision when I'm at the table. And a lot of the times I get it right, and sometimes I don't, but I use those times to improve my process.
That's
And
fascinating.
make it fun for all the other, fans. We get to see all these awesome videos that you do with fans in the stands and, just selling stuff in general and, giving us a glimpse of these other vendors too. I think it's really cool. So besides beer, besides alcohol, what is like the best selling item? Is it hot dogs?
Yeah, it's probably got to be hot dogs.
Okay.
When it's cold, we get the April and May and late September games. Hot chocolate's a great seller. But hot dogs is for the under 21-year-olds, hot dogs is generally the best thing to sell if they can get it. When I first started my first year, I was selling like lemon chill when it was 55 degrees, and I was
Right.
on deck, or I'd be doing soda down in the 200 section. So you definitely, as an under 21-year-old, there are much more limited opportunities, but it was nice to turn 21 and graduate to the big leagues and get a little more seniority.
I want to, that's great. I want to circle back to the guys that have been there for 50. You said 50, some have been there for 50 years.
Yeah. The longest standing member, his name is Hopper. He's been there his name is David Komarov. He goes by Hopper because when he was younger, he would hop over the seats to get to people to sell more quickly. This is his 60th season. So he's been there the most of any vendors, but there's a number that have been there for over half a century.
Who's the guy that just yells hot dog really loud that I hear on TV and every time I go to the game?
That's Antonio. He's one of the hardest working hot dog vendors, by far the loudest. He's done hot dogs, I think, almost every game this year. Generally, back in the day, he would do lemon chill. I remember him as the lemon chill guy when I first started. So it'd be lemon chill, frozen lemonade constantly. You can hear it on the broadcast or the radio. But Antonio, I'm not exactly sure how many years he's been there. I should probably ask him.
And do these guys like reminisce and talk about kind of like the glory days and what Wrigley used to be like and what it was like working, back in the 80s and the 70s? Do they talk to you about all this stuff?
Constantly. I think that's what has been so fun for me the past few years is I've gotten to know the older vendors a lot better, especially once I started to sell alcohol and work in the same sections as them and kind of like establish myself as a Wrigley Field vendor that's recognizable. And this was even before I started making videos. I just got to know the guys and few women. There are a few female vendors.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wanted to like highlight them and share their stories. And that was one of the motivations for starting to make the videos, was to honor the guys, the people that have been at Wrigley for longer than anyone in the franchise. There's no players, no owners, no grounds crew. Like,
that's
it's
wild.
the vendors that are the lifeblood of Wrigley Field. And then for me, it's been so fun to just hear some of their stories of the antics back in the day, and when they used to sell soda and peanuts for a nickel, and some of the stories with interacting with Harry Carey and the players. And I wanted to kind of give a platform for them to be able to share those with the masses and with the diehard Cubs fans that appreciate it. And it's even grown outside of that. There have been people internationally that have reached out to me via Instagram direct message or on TikTok and be like, hey, I'm from the Philippines. Hey, I'm from England. Like, I love this content. I don't follow baseball, but you make me want to come to Wrigley Field. And ultimately, like, that's the main goal, is to spread my love of the Cubs and share and highlight the vendors.
That's awesome. I bet there's so many stories.
Tons. Yeah. And just watching them banter with each other. These guys have been college roommates. They've been best friends for decades, and they go to work every day and have friendly competition of who can sell the most beer, and they're passionate baseball fans. And some of my favorite parts of vending are just sitting in the vendor office before lineup, just schmoozing with the guys. And it's incredibly fun.
Yeah. So you touched on a couple parts of, a day in the life of a Wrigley vendor. Could you just walk us through kind of what that looks like from, getting to the
lineup to
the
picking your food?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So for me, I make a big emphasis of fueling up and hydrating, because it is a very physical job. I don't stretch nearly enough. I need to do a lot better job taking care of my body before the game. But I'll walk over to the stadium. I probably leave like an hour and a half before first pitch, because I live about 10 minutes away. And then I'll gather in the room. I'll hang out with everyone for 20 or so minutes. They'll call lineup about an hour before first pitch or so. And then I generally gets to my spot in line, say about 50 to 45 minutes before first pitch. So I pick my item. And then depending on the game, or if there's a giveaway day, sometimes I'll go grab a bite to eat before the game, or sometimes I'll go straight in and start selling maybe like a half hour before the first pitch. But we've got these like little commissaries underneath in the concourse that we reload all our product at. So that's where we go to get our credit card machines and get our first load of product. and then up into the seats. And the stadium is divided into 6 sections for vendors. So basically, if you drew a line at home plate, and then it's the hundreds, the 200s, and the upper deck. So you would be selling Bud Light down the third base line in the hundreds, or you'd be selling hot dogs down the first base line in the upper deck. So it's your area and commissary is based on one of those 6 sections that you are assigned to for the game. But then it's off to chat with the fans, sell a bunch of food and beverages, maybe catch a couple of the high tense moments when everyone's standing up and you can't sell anyway. So you just turn your head and watch Mark Leiter Jr. get a huge strikeout with the bases loaded. So it's really just a blast to be in the Wrigley environment.
Yeah. You talked just briefly about like the little commensaries that you guys meet up at below deck to kind of get your product. Are there any other areas like that the normal fan or people going to the game aren't privy to that you get exclusive access to, or that you know about, like I don't know, are there like tunnels or other like nooks and crannies?
If there are, I'm not super familiar with them. I bet the grounds crew has a bunch, but I think it's really just the commissaries, and we can, like, we're friends with the concession stand people too, so a lot of them are connected to the commissaries themselves. But yeah, kind of have free reign in the concession standpoint. But other than that, I don't have a ton of access elsewhere to exclusive parts of the stadium.
I didn't know. It's an old stadium. I didn't know.
Maybe I'm gonna have to dig into that, I think, because now you've piqued my interest.
But you did get that kind of an insider experience with Jeremiah Paprocki, the announcer for the stadium too, right? You guys kind of did a little trading places thing. Tell us about that experience, like, being on the loudspeaker at Wrigley, and then, his little venture into just doing what you do.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Jeremiah and I were tasked with being the MCs for the hot dogs races around the bases presented by Vienna Beef for National Hot Dog Day. So that event took place in Gallagher Way on National Hot Dog Day, but in the early afternoon. So we had met each other a couple times prior, but have started to become friends. And I pitched a few ideas to him that I had from a social standpoint, and we thought it would be fun to make a collab video. So obviously I've got my Wrigley ID, and when I'm with the PA announcer, I can go up to the press box with him. So we made a couple videos up there, and then before the game, we met up again and went into the stadium, and I grabbed my hot dog container and vest and gave it to him, and he was walking around, and he even went into the bleachers before the game and had some fun with the season ticket holders. There's generally no vendors in the bleachers, and we weren't actually selling hot dogs. I was giving him a little taste of what it would be like. And that hot dog container is a lot lighter when there's no hot dogs in it. And he was still feeling it even after just a few minutes of walking around. But it was an absolute blast. He's a really good dude, passionate about what he does. And I'm looking forward to hopefully doing some more collabs with him down the road.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And I noticed like you're getting quite a big audience on social media, and I'm assuming you're on TikTok as well as Instagram, and you're getting thousands of followers now and thousands of views on your videos. Has anyone from like the Cubs organization approached you about like doing media for them, or doing any special kind of coverage, or on their social media accounts or anything like that? Are you getting noticed? Are other vendors kind of calling you Hollywood or what?
Totally. There's definitely a buzz inside the vendor room for sure about the videos, and even some older vendors who I've never talked to. I'll start to introduce myself and ask, can I interview you, or do you want to be in this video? And they'll be like, oh, you're the TikTok guy. But yeah, I mean, the Cubs. So what ended up happening was I started making videos about 10 days before opening day this season. So it's really only been about 4.5 months. And I made a day in the life video. It was the second game of the season. It's like April 2nd, maybe. And it got like 300,000 views on TikTok and Instagram. And the next morning, I had someone from the Cubs front office commented saying, hey, I work for the Cubs. We should be friends. And I also got a DM from someone in Chicago media in the press. And they're like, hey, would love to do a story about you. And that's kind of when I knew. I was like, maybe I stumbled upon something here. But because of that, I actually have a great friendship now with the Cubs front office worker. She works in corporate partnerships, and we did some official collaborations with the Cubs and Vienna Beef for National Hot Dog Day. So there are a few videos that I made that the Cubs posted on their socials. One of them being which hot dog vendor has the best hot dog call. And I'm sure you guys have seen that, and Antonio's celebrity has significantly grown from that. But that video alone not only got 500,000 views, on each platform for the Cubs socials, but it got on the Chicago WGN Morning News. It was on MLB Network. So I think there's opportunities down the road. Hopefully, like I said, I'm a huge Cubs fan. Would love to help the team however I can. So I think there's going to be some cool things that we can work on together down the road. But to be able to work officially with the Cubs and just see myself on the Cubs Instagram was kind of a dream.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Have you had the chance to meet any players yet or not?
I have not met any players because of the social media yet, but Justin Steele follows me on TikTok and we've interacted on it before. Actually, I did meet very briefly. I met Adbert Alzolai at the hot dogs races around the bases. He showed up with his either girlfriend or wife and their dog. So we chatted very briefly, but I'd love to do some content with the players moving forward. So hopefully we keep growing and maybe it'll pop up on their For You page, and maybe Stroh or Bellinger will give me a follow, and then I can get a video of their best hot dog calls.
That's awesome. Yeah. Evan and I are Cubs fans as well. And you said you've been there since 2015, right? Obviously the World Series in 2016 must have been a crazy environment to be working at. But I mean, just from my couch and watching the games, the vibes right now at Wrigley seem like they're at an all-time high. They went for it at the deadline, adding Candelario. They had that 8-game winning streak. Is it about as intense and insane at that stadium right now as it was in 2016?
Yeah, this past week, Wrigley has not felt like this past week since 2019. I mean, between the Red Series and the Braves, it was awesome. And Cubs fans, it's good to be back in this position. And I really hope that we keep coming out from a fan perspective, packing the place. The energy is so palpable. And hopefully the Cubs keep winning ball games, because I would be thrilled to have a very competitive September of competitive baseball. So yeah, this past week at Wrigley, I mean, it felt like playoff atmosphere baseball, and it was August 1st. Yeah. So I can only imagine what this might feel like if we make it to September competing for a spot.
And you just piqued my curiosity. As a vendor, if they go in the playoffs, does it get more selective, and is it considered like a bonus? Do more vendors get probably tipped more?
Oh yeah, I mean, playoff baseball, you always want to work it. I remember for 2016, even though I was in college, I went to the University of Illinois, but I would drive up every single weekend to come work the series. So
that's awesome.
So
I love that commitment.
That's great.
You gotta show
up.
It's
not a bad drive
for the crew. No, it's not bad at all. And it just so happened that every home game during each series just happened to be on the weekend. So I'd finish class on Thursday, I'd drive up Thursday night, stay with my folks in the suburbs. I'd work the weekend games, and then right after Sunday, I would drive straight back to Champaign, get there at 2 a.m, and go to class Monday. Totally worth it. It was so much fun. I still I have very vivid memories of NLCS Game 6 against the Dodgers, and then obviously the 3 World Series games. I was selling for the World Series. I almost didn't work the Game 5 because I was so anxious, and I didn't think I could stomach watching the Cubs lose a World Series. And my friends that I vended with, they're like, dude, you're an idiot. You're going.
Right.
We're not letting you miss this. And thank God, because that was an awesome game. And obviously we all know what happened. But I mean, I feel incredibly fortunate to have had that opportunity.
The perks of being a vendor at Wrigley, man.
Yeah.
It's
so cool.
The best.
So driving up from U of I up to the game, are you just practicing your call in the car? Are you just
exactly
warming up the pipes for the weekend?
Roll down the window on the highway and see how many cars can hear my it was probably peanut call at the time. but yeah, I mean, those drives were exciting. And for game 7, I ended up having an accounting exams on a Wednesday, and I emailed my accounting professor and I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to take a 0 on this exam because it was at 7 o'clock. I was like, is there any way you could schedule a conflict exam? Like, please let me take this earlier so that I could go sit and watch the boys. And she did. I still ended up failing the exam because I was so nervous about the game. But Champaign was similar to Wrigleyville in terms of just mass hysteria in the streets. I cried for hours after they won. My dad called me to congratulate the team on the win, and I don't really remember talking to him. And he said he hung up after 3 minutes because he would ask me questions and I would just be sobbing and couldn't speak. So yeah, I mean, I look back very, very fondly at 2016, and hopefully we're headed in that direction again.
Yeah, you just took the words right out of my mouth, man. Jonah, thanks so much for being here today. I really, I hope we make it into the playoffs. I hope you get to experience that again. And if everyone who's listening, go ahead and give them a follow on social media. I believe it's Instagram and TikTok. Are you both at Jewish Jonah on both of those?
At Jewish Jonah on both.
All right. Thanks a lot. Jonah Fialkow, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Had a lot of fun.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Jonah.
it.
All right. That was our guest, Jonah Fialkow. He's a seat vendor at Wrigley Field. Again, you can find him on Instagram and all socials at Jewish Jonah. I thought it was a great guest. That was a lot of fun talking to Jonah about the Wrigley sales and being a vendor.
Yeah.
A lot of insider information there.
Right. Insider information. You don't really, I feel like you don't think about it too much when you're at a game of how much they're probably privy to and what that job is like. But you got a fact for me? You got a fast fact for me?
Do. So pose a question to you, Dan. Per ounce, what team in the MLB has the most expensive beer and which team has the least expensive beer?
Per ounce, what team has the most expensive beer? I don't know. The Yankees?
The Dodgers.
The Dodgers.
LA,
Okay.
but
And then the least expensive is probably like what? Like
beer.
the cheapest? I want to say Kansas City Royals, but then it might be like the Cardinals or something.
It's a good guess. Seattle Mariners, though.
No. Oh, wow.
Is
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I thought that was
All
interesting.
right.
The Braves are actually towards the bottom too. For being such a great team, you can go there, get some cheap beers. I think that's pretty cool.
Not bad.
But that's been our show today. Thanks again to our guest, Jonah Fialkow, for joining us. For Dan Slook, I'm Evan Bierman. You've been listening to the Domestic Draft Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to rate the show. You can find us on Twitter at Domestic Draft, on Instagram at Domestic Draft Podcast. Our website is domesticdraft.com, and you can watch the show on YouTube. Just search up Domestic Draft and drop us a sub. Thanks again for listening. Cheers.
Cheers.